Whenever we talk about second citizenship and the power of being a dual citizen, we see a lot of myths come out of the woodwork. Well, today I'm going to set the record straight on 3 myths in particular. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist, and here it is our mission to empower and to help successful entrepreneurs and investors to legally reduce their tax bill overseas, expand their options with things like second passports, and to create wealth in new boom markets. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. And what's interesting about second passports is you can put a lot of those goals of ours together. A second passport can, in certain circumstances, help you reduce your tax bill. It can help you find new banking opportunities, open up new opportunities in the cryptocurrency space, new investments. It can help you live in different places, be protected, be diversified, have options in this crazy world. But a lot of folks get confused with how exactly this works. And so if there's questions that you've had about how second citizenship works, I want you to leave a comment below, because I want to make sure people have the right idea about this. One of the things that we see a lot is confusion about how the financial aspects of a second passport works. And so let's talk about 3 specific myths about second passports. And the first one is very straightforward. You can't be a dual citizen. For most people in the world, and for a growing number of people in the world, that is a myth. The number one myth is that you cannot be a dual citizen. Now, what a lot of people get tripped up on is they will see, I came from the United States, for example, and so you'll see, hey, when you enter the United States, you have to enter as a U.S. citizen. And when you're when you're physically in the United States, they are going to treat you as their citizen. That's how pretty much every country does it. I had a friend of a friend who was an ambassador in Russia. He was a Russian citizen, but he was also a citizen of the other country. And Russia allowed him to become the ambassador in basically his own country, to his own country, so long as he gave up diplomatic immunity. Because they said, listen, this is your country. When you're here, you're also our citizen. You really are only our citizen. Okay, we'll let you work for this country. When you're in a country of your citizenship, they view you as only their citizen. And so what will be asked sometimes is, hey, if I'm American and I have all these restrictions on reporting my foreign bank accounts and FATCA and FBAR and all that, if I go and get a St. Lucia passport in the Caribbean, can I just do everything as a St. Lucian? No, because you're still a U.S. citizen, right? You're both. But the U.S., for their purposes, doesn't really care about the other one, okay? So you can't use a second passport to duck out of rules that apply to you when you're living in another country, or if you're a U.S. citizen, if you're living anywhere. But what people get confused about, I think, is, again, that idea that because the U.S. says here you're only U.S. to us, that they don't allow you to have the other passports. They just simply don't recognize them. Okay, now there are some countries where dual citizenship is outlawed. We've talked before about how I believe the trend is generally going towards more and more countries opening up. We're seeing that. Some of the last countries in Europe that are opening up to allow dual citizenship, from Norway to Georgia. So for the most part, you can be a dual citizen. What it just simply means is if you're in one of your passport countries, they are not going to allow you to get in legal trouble, for example, and then call the embassy of the other country. Or, they're not going to allow you to jump over the embassy gates of your other passport and claim that you're untouchable. The second myth that it's really important when it comes to getting a second citizenship that we see a lot here is you can get a second passport by doing nothing. Okay, this is a myth. And let me explain what I mean. For the longest time, as the most popular website for people who are looking for offshore strategies, alternative citizenships, etc., we have seen people searching for fast, easy, cheap citizenship, or citizenship with no work, or how to get a citizenship for free. No country, and I mean no country, I don't care how lowly you think the country is, no country just wants to hand you a citizenship when you land at the airport. And yet I think a lot of people, mostly Westerners in all fairness, those of us who come from the West who think hey, we're up here. If I show up in some, hellhole country, they should just be greeting me with a bow and, okay, here's your citizenship. All right, you're too good for us. No country's going to do that. Now, The more you invest, the more you pay. The faster the process is, the less involved it is. Citizenship by investment is the most commoditized, streamlined example of that. You can literally sit in your house, gather all your documents, gather your paperwork, send them off in the mail. The Caribbean country like St. Lucia, Dominique, etc., they do their due diligence on you. Everything's done remotely. You sign the oath of allegiance. You can have your agent pick up your passport and send it to you. We do that for folks all the time. Okay, you can be a St. Lucian, never go to St. Lucia. A Grenadian, never been to Grenada. That's fine. But you're going to pay a $100,000 or $150,000 donation or make a substantial, not so great investment for the privilege. Okay, if you want to get easy access to live in the United Kingdom and eventually become a citizen, it's going to cost you millions of pounds to get in streamlined. Or you can go and wait in line with everyone else. Same thing in the United States. The EB-5 program, $900,000 investment. For most nationalities, you're going to cut to the front of the line. Okay? But you're spending $900,000. So the more money that you spend, like in these Caribbean countries, or in many other developed countries, invest, money gets you to the front of the line. If you don't want to spend or invest a lot of money, you can go and in some countries, particularly in Latin America, you can show that you have a salary, or you can show that you have enough money to support yourself for a year or 2 years or whatever the country's criteria are. Latin American countries are more focused on, are you earning money? Can you support yourself? Asian countries, not so good for passports, are more good for, do you have wealth? Can you bring in 100 grand? But just put in the bank kind of thing. Other countries will say, hey, are you willing to commit to spending 6 months here? If you are, we have almost no requirements. You can just come on in and we'll give you your residence permit, and that'll lead to citizenship in the future. But what I do see from time to time is I don't want to spend any time in the country. I barely even want to go there. Sometimes people will say, hey, Andrew, can I just have a power of attorney to even pick up my residence card? I don't really want to invest any money because, why? Think about it. It's like, what's in it for the country? This guy doesn't even want to come to our country. He wants to contribute nothing to the economy. He wants to hire 0 people. He doesn't want to move his business here. He wants to do absolutely nothing. He's too good to even show up and pick up a card. Why, for what, right? I mean, let's get real, guys. There are ways you can do it affordably. There are ways you can do it if you don't have a lot of money. Again, Latin American countries, you don't need a lot of money. You don't need to have vast sums of wealth. You need to have some income. In many cases, in some of the countries in South America like the Ecuadors, the Bolivias, that kind of thing, you might need like $900 a month, right? But you need something. And the less you contribute, the more likely they are to want you to actually spend time living in the country. It may be 6 months in some cases. It may be 9 months in some cases. In some cases, it may be 4 weeks. Okay? We do things here where we talk about like paper citizenship, where you are a resident on paper and you're working towards naturalization. But again, those countries generally want some kind of investment. It might only be 20 grand. It might be 50 grand, it might be 100 grand, But again, imagine this. If you've got a great passport, you're going to make it difficult to get, because what do you need more people for? Singapore, I wrote in 2013. I had a meeting with some important people in Singapore. They said, this is your last chance to really get in, become a resident, and be able to work towards citizenship. They're going to shut the whole thing down, and they did. Because Singapore says, we've got one of the best passports on earth. We're a low-tax country. Everyone wants to come here. What do we need to do? You should have come here 20 years ago when we were looking for people. It's too late, right? If you want to invest several $1 million, we'll take you. Even then, we may not give you citizenship because they just don't simply need to. So we want to make sure we're adjusting our standards to where, fast, easy, cheap, lower amounts, less commitment, less time in the country. It's not going to be a Singapore level passport. It's going to be a lower level passport, which quite frankly, I think could be good enough. Quite frankly, it might be the best option, especially if you're a Westerner, because it's a great alternative. Being American and Bolivian, for example, may be better for you than being American and French, because Bolivia gives you the power of being left alone. It's a different kind of vibe down there. You're getting something that's different. They complement each other. But, don't expect, unless you are making a huge investment, to be able to get French citizenship very easily or Singaporean citizenship very easily. Nothing is just given away for free. Now, myth number 3 is there's no benefit to having a second citizenship if I'm a Westerner, okay? And I'll give you a bonus myth here, because I'll kind of split it up into 2 parts, 3A and 3B. The first part is for Americans. Hey, what's the benefit? What's the purpose You're correct, Andrew. If you're a U.S. citizen, you're a U.S. citizen, you're a U.S. citizen. Being St. Lucian, being Bolivian, being whatever doesn't help you get out of all the restrictions. Now, obviously some Americans, in fact the numbers have started going back up, have chosen to get rid of their U.S. citizenship. And so it's pretty difficult to do that. You theoretically could, and I know some folks who have, but it's pretty difficult to get rid of one citizenship until you have another one, because you want to have a functional life. And so that's one reason. But if you don't plan to give up your citizenship and you are an American, then where can it help? Well, for example, under the foreign earned income exclusion, if you plan to spend more time living in the United States, being a citizen of another country that you live in could actually make your tax exclusion more valid. It could give you a better case for getting a tax exclusion. Okay. Having a second passport in some cases can also open up certain investments where it's not the U.S. government restricting you, but it's the investment restricting you, where they don't want to deal with a U.S. citizen, or at least they don't want a U.S. passport. Obviously, in some of them just say, hey, if you're a U.S. citizen, we don't care what else you are. But there are some investments in the real estate space, in some kind of mutual funds or funds, in the crypto space, where, hey, if you have a second passport, that can help you. Okay, so from a tax perspective to a certain extent, from an investment perspective, from just a citizenship insurance perspective, knowing that you have a second passport as an American means you always have options. If tomorrow things in the U.S. get so bad that you want to bounce, you don't have to go and hope that someone will give you a second passport. Now, for other Westerners, what I've said for some time now, and we're seeing growing evidence of this coming, is I do believe having a backup passport as an insurance policy against growing taxes, regulations, and other extraterritorial measures where, I'm French, I'm living in Vanuatu where there's no tax. Does France want to start taxing me? Do they want to start having me report my bank accounts? That's already started. Having the option if you're a Westerner, listen, what we've seen during the coronavirus crisis, you've seen American, French, Italian passport holders, persona non grata. I've got a friend who would like to return to where he lives in Asia. He took a little trip, and he's a U.S. passport holder. Unfortunately, the country where he lives right now is not accepting any U.S. passport holders under any circumstances. Doesn't matter if you went to the United States or not. They just say, hey, Americans, you're on the naughty list. French were also on the list. I remember at the beginning of the outbreak, some Italians were taking a boat across the ocean, and they were going to the Caribbean. They didn't even know what the coronavirus was. And when they arrived, the girl said, I was rejected because I had an Italian passport. She's like, we don't live in Italy. I haven't been to Italy for years, but it didn't matter. The rules were, hey, we don't want Italians. And so what we've seen is for the first time for a lot of people, seeing that the good passports, I've got a very good passport, I don't need, that's for the little people. Suddenly the good passports became not so good. Suddenly the Tier B passports that I have became much more attractive and benign to most countries, the way that they already have been to many banks, for example, for many years. But suddenly those Tier B passports that nobody really thinks about too much became more benign than all the countries that were suddenly splashed on the front of the newspaper. The Spains, the Italys, the US's, etc. And so I think that you're going to see more stuff like that happening in addition to higher taxes and regulations, and you're going to want to have an insurance policy. You're going to want to have an option. And I just think it's going to become more expensive and more restrictive just being the citizen of a Western country in the future. It may take 5 years, 10 years, even 20 years. May not be a rush, but getting started on a second passport would be helpful. So I think there absolutely are benefits for Americans and for all Westerners. Everyone should have a citizenship insurance policy if they're successful. And I think that you're going to see a lot more need for that in the future. So those are some myths that I hear about. What do you think about those myths? Leave a comment below. Maybe you've thought about this before. Maybe there's something that's still unclear. Maybe you have a question. Leave a comment below. I want to hear what you think about second citizenship and what you think about these myths. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.